a lot of discussion around procurement, and virtually everything is around AI, of course, isn't it? And we're going to really home in on that now with Coupa, one of our headline sponsors here at Procurement Live London 2025. So it's a real pleasure to ask Tricia to come back onto stage one. Tricia, Senior Vice President, Product Marketing at Coupa. For those who don't know, I can't think there's anybody who don't know, is it something like 3,000 customer companies around the world?
Yeah, 3,000 plus clients.
3,000 plus clients around the world using Coupa as a sort of margin multiplier across their businesses. And of course, AI is pretty much at the center of what you do. So, Tricia, the AI-powered future of procurement and supply chain. You have 25 minutes or thereabouts to talk about from now. And are we taking questions at the end if there's time?
Sounds good.
Okay. So,
I'm down to 20 minutes on the clock, so I'll go fast, right? And you'll all tell me to slow down if it's not making sense. Please. Okay, thank you very much, and very excited to be here. I introduced myself when I was on the panel earlier, but just for those of you that aren't here. Tricia Miller, I'm at Coupa, and I have responsibility for product marketing. But I'm not here today to talk to you about marketing because that is not my area of expertise. I've spent 20 plus years of my career in procurement, digitizing the function, and then a CPO for a couple of years. And so here, because I believe that tech is a core component to what this function can do. And obviously at this point we can't have a conversation around tech without having a conversation around AI. But what you'll see in this discussion as I go through it and pretty consistently, in the case of procurement, AI isn't a threat to the jobs. We as procurement functions all know how understaffed we are, and we need to be thinking about AI and how it's going to help us do what we need to do so that we can do more, because the expectations of the function just keep increasing. But that's about me, a little bit about Coupa. So mentioned 3,100, I should say, global customers. A couple of other numbers of relevance here. 3 billion AI callouts every year, right? We're talking a lot about AI. When we think about AI, a lot of us tend to think about the new stuff, the agents, etc. But remind yourself, AI has been in place for decades at this point, and the automations and the intelligence and the predictions that it gives. And so AI is adding value throughout the end-to-end suite and throughout the end-to-end function if you're on something else. Another number that's really important, and we're going to hone on it, is $8 trillion worth of data. Coupa is very fortunate that all of the transactional data essentially, or the virtual majority of it is data that's available. It's anonymized and it's available for us to use. So as we built the AI that's already exists and what's coming next, we're in this incredible position to build it on a data moat of $8 trillion worth of transactions, and that makes it very intelligent. But let's get to procurement and supply chain overall, right? Let's start with the problems or opportunities, depending on where you stand on positive or a negative spin on things. But the reality of it is every single one of you that are in procurement or supply chain right now are dealing with one of these problems. Supply chain fragility. Where are our pieces coming from? Are they going to be available? Do we have the insights to even answer those questions? Energy shifts, right? As we look at what we need to do to adopt sustainable energy sources, where are we finding them? And not just sustainable energy sources, but how is an organization achieving its sustainability goals overall without looking at what its third parties are doing for it? And more often than not, all of these questions are coming to procurement functions and supply chain functions, and we're sitting aspiring to answer them, but we're not always in the position and well set up to address all of these. So what do we need to do? If we appreciate that procurement is now being looked at as a more valuable function, if the expectations of the function have increased, we want to be able to step up to that. So what are our options? Because not stepping up to it means we continue to be in a place where we've historically been put, which is transactional and back office. And so how do we as functions take the step forward to recognize we're still always going to have to do those transactions, or at least oversee and own those processes, but we want to do that in a way that allows us to add the value as well, right? So that brings us to this pivotal point. We're at this crossroads. you will never be successful as a procurement function, depending on what your scope is. It might go all the way to payables, but at a minimum, it's somewhere around sourcing, maybe purchasing, and down to payables. You're never going to be effective in saying, no, I don't want to do those things anymore. I really like all this talk about ESG and business partnering, supplier relationship management. I want to play over here. We're going to have to do both. But how do we do both? How do we step up to the asks that were on the previous slide and still do everything that's being traditionally asked of us when, again, nobody's coming with you to say you can have a 20 to 30% increase in headcount and X dollars in investment? So how do we make that happen? And fundamentally, the value of thinking and solving for this problem now allows you to reposition the procurement organization overall. You need to standardize and simplify your processes. Doesn't matter how unique they are, they can all be simplified. So standardize and simplify them to take friction out of your process, to take people out of that work, and digitize them to take the data. Don't forget that as you put a tool in, your number one priority should be, what's the data telling me, right? We are standardizing, simplifying, and automating so that the procurement function can stop doing, or can do less of, not stop. I just said you'll never get rid of that work, so I'll stick with that, but can do less of the sourcing execution where it's non-value add, or purchase order centralization where that's not as value add, and that can be done by technology. And you as a function then get to take that intelligence, that data, and really move it into those strategic value add capabilities that would allow you to respond to those asks that are coming from our leaders. So recognizing you're at that crossroads and recognizing you have a good opportunity to make that change is key, I think, to understanding kind of the steps you take to driving to that change. I think if you take a look at this slide, everybody should be able to recognize themselves or where their function is on this slide. I'm sure most of us aspire to be in 4. Or a written, you can write your own version of 4. I'm sure you've all seen different versions of this. But the reality of it is from what I've seen, very few procurement functions get to be at 4 just yet. And so what we need to recognize is many of us are operating in the 1-2 stage. Maybe you're at 3, and that's great. But we need to see that through the digitization of the function and leveraging AI built on the right data, you get to turbocharge this maturity curve. You don't necessarily get to skip the steps. I've had a lot of conversations, even with my peers recently, around, does the maturity curve change now as we look at technology? Does it change as we look at AI? And the position that we've settled on, and I feel very strongly about, is no, it doesn't change. It just means that you can get up that maturity curve faster, and that's what we aspire to. We aspire that if we implement a technology that moves us from stage 1 to stage 2, we're able to make those moves faster than we have before. The simplification of that implementation is step number 1, but then recognizing and leveraging what AI exists at each stage in each part of the step allows you to see what's next and how you can drive that next level of value as you move up that maturity curve. I'm going to go back to calling out that data point. I mentioned the $8 trillion worth of data, and I'm going to focus on it because it is a big selling point of Coupa. But I want to talk about why it's really, really important. At this point, I think everybody knows that data is the core of AI. You can build the AI agent on anything. The AI agent and AI in general, not just the agentic, but AI in general, will effectively deliver value because of the data that it's recognizing. And the $8 trillion worth of data that Coupa has built up over the 19, almost 20 years of its history, means that the power that we're able to implement and deliver for our customers at each stage of that process, as they move up that maturity curve, allows you not only to put a tool and a process out there, but at each stage be generating insights. And those insights are what allow you to have those conversations with your business leaders. So what have they done? When we look at some of our customers, and I hope that each and every one of you have some metrics that you're measuring to. These are some pretty simplistic ones, and what I mean by that is they're more operational effectiveness, but it's always worth calling out. Coupa produces a benchmarking report every year. If you haven't got a copy, there is one at our booth. There's multiple copies at our booth, but it's an incredibly powerful benchmarking report because it's using that $8 trillion worth of historical data to say what good looks like. And as procurement functions, we need to be very willing to be measured. Where are we now against the benchmarks? What's our goal? And what do we need to do to move to those goals? That is fundamentally what will demonstrate to the larger organization that you are able to able to deliver the value that we are committing to them, because we're making the changes on the ground. So let's take a look. Sanofi, for example, 97% first-time match on POs. If we look at AstraZeneca, they reduced cycle times to 4 business hours. Okay? If you understand your processes, you will be able to see how those processes can be improved. I was talking to a couple of individuals earlier. In a past life, we were able to, we found out in one particular country, they had 95% of the requisitions had 5 or more approvers, when the average was about 10% of requisitions globally had 5 or more approvers. And so when you sit down with that data point, now you can have a conversation with someone to say, can we dig into this? Without those data points, it's very much emotion. I need the approvers. I don't know why you're picking, but being able to highlight the variance that exists allows you to have conversations to drive the change. And in that case, we didn't actually get rid of those steps. We didn't get rid of the activity, but we did automate it. It wasn't people anymore. So it was no longer 5 approvers, but all the activities were happening through the system. And so recognizing your benchmark, what good looks like, where you are against it, and then looking at what's happening in your process that's preventing you from getting there, those are the types of data points that allow you to have fact-based, unemotional conversations with different parts of the business that enable that change. So within the Coupa platform, there are across the spectrum, and I do have a end-to-end process flow, and I'll pull it up in a little while here, but 125 different AI components live right now and driving that different value. Whether it's real-time analysis of invoices to spot fraudulent buying or purchasing to spot fraudulent buying, whether it is the agent that is a knowledge agent, and again, I'm picking broad spectrum there, things that are historical AI where we're looking at data and able to find real-time whether some questionable invoicing and purchasing is happening, or we've got an agent who is looking at your knowledge base and providing help real-time in the system. Better still, an agent that is looking at SOWs, so services statement of work, analyzing them and creating a purchase order against them, right? But recognizing that the innovations that sit behind the curve are responding to business problems. What's your business problem? Understanding how the agent's going to solution that will allow you to make sure that you're getting that value out of them. And this is that end-to-end flow I talked about. But again, some numbers up there. Much of this is in our benchmarking report. But I would argue if you're a current Coupa customer and you're not looking at how you measure against these things, then we should be having conversations. I'm here for the rest of the day. You can literally sit me down anytime in the rest of the day, because we should be having conversations about how we move you up on those curves. What are you not using? How can we help you and guide you as you're talking to your business teams about why you're not able to get these numbers? If you're a prospect, equally happy to have those conversations, but just a little bit less informed. But every single one of us need to look at what good looks like, and then think about where we are driving innovations that are built in the platform and built on that data to help us turbocharge that path up, turbocharge the path up that maturity model. And with that, right, and I'm going to talk a little bit futuristic here as we work to all of this, right? With that, if we're looking at what built on that data, what agents can do and what AI can do overall, between our buy side and our supply side, we should be able to build an autonomous spend management solution. Some of this exists already. As I mentioned, if there's AI in the solution, it is already building autonomous spend management. But what we aspire to is fully autonomous between buy and supply side, where the transactions within your defined parameters are automatically happening, and we don't need people wasting time on that. Right? We don't need, one of two things is happening. You either have, as an example, tail spend management problem and no one's managing it because it's too much work, or you have a lot of people managing it. But in both those scenarios, that type of transaction could happen autonomously when we're looking at how we build the parameters that are specific to your organization, and we leverage the data underneath it to make sure that the agents are negotiating appropriately on our behalf. And with all of that freed up capacity, If your people are currently doing it, you move into those strategic focus areas, category strategies, supplier relationship management, business partnering. Or if your people aren't doing it, you just drove out savings and cost value and risk management reductions. But all of those things are very, very compelling arguments for you to help sell the procurement story within your organization. Now, I started by saying, and I hope my message has been consistent about this, AI in procurement isn't going to replace people. There aren't enough people. It'll replace roles. And so we need to recognize that it is humans and machines working together. There's a stat here, and I do think it's pretty interesting how quickly, as we look at tech, things change. So let me explain what I mean by that. It's very recently, we were all, and still are, looking at stats that we think about 20%, 40%, 60% of procurement jobs will be eliminated, or roles will be eliminated by AI. I have a stat that's already saying, well, we're past that and we're on the negative. It hasn't happened. 95% of AI pilots are failing. And so we need to be thinking about what we need to do within our organization to make sure that we're just not another stat, and particularly a negative stat. How do you make sure that as you apply AI and get value from AI, it's delivering? This particular study that came out, it was published in the Forbes magazine, it came out of MIT, it's not that the technology doesn't do what it needs to. It's that the organization isn't applying it in the same way. They're building versus buying. They're putting AI in because they're being pressured to put AI in. They're not looking at the business problem and saying, is this a valid use of AI, and is it going to fix my problem? And so it's really important that as you look at your journey, both the digitization journey and then the leveraging AI on top of that, you really are looking at what is your business problem and how are you applying a solution to fix that, because that is when success will one, be measurable, and two, can be demonstrated that it was delivered. Okay? Let's go back to the stats where we're able to say it's innovated and it's shown us the value it's delivered, rather than stats that say, yeah, we invested money in it, it didn't deliver, my company has lost interest in it now. So avoid some of those pitfalls. A key part of avoiding the pitfalls, and I will preempt it on the next slide, but a key part of avoiding those pitfalls is, as I said, understanding, one, your business problem, and two, how tech is going to solve it. So I put this slide in here. This is Coupa's Navi AI roadmap. And I put this in here not because I'm going to bore you with each of the individual agents. Trust me, if you want to learn more about any of these agents, we're running demos in the afternoon, and so at the booth there will be demos, and we're willing to answer all these questions. But I put this in here more so on the human side. If within your procurement organization or supply chain organization, you have not got someone with the capacity and the acumen to really be looking at what's next in that roadmap and thinking about how, as an example, the sourcing negotiation agent might help a business problem you have, or might help a barrier that you have to be successful, or you're not thinking about what the intake agent can do to simplify that end user experience, you're missing out on the innovations driving value within your organization as soon as they're delivered. I personally believe, and I've old team members here, I personally believe this has always been necessary within different corporate functions to have that tech, the technology understanding and the capacity then to drive the value. But now more than ever, this is an essential part of how we as functions are going to continue to be able to innovate and drive value and meet expectations of our leadership team. So asking each and every single one of your tech providers what's on their roadmap, and more specifically, not what is the innovation, what business problem is it going to solve, is going to be critical for you to take advantage of this sooner rather than later. And that is that human-based slide. There are multiple components that we as procurement functions, or just in general corporate functions, need to recognize that we need to change how we operate for this next wave of technology. These are a few that, for me, were very key to being successful as we drove out the automation that I've delivered in my roles within procurement. You need a cross-functional AI center of excellence. And what I mean by that is that person in your team, that team in your team, depending on how large a procurement function you have, that are paying attention to those roadmaps, that are being approached about these business problems and are plugging them together. this is an investment. You might argue that, hey, I can't afford to give up one of my sourcing or category managers to invest in a role like this. It is, without question, pays for itself, because it ensures you're getting the value from the innovation you're already paying your SaaS provider for, and it also ensures that you as a function are continuously improving and driving more value. So that's number one, having somebody, hopefully someone who's quite excited about technology. That's kind of a key part, otherwise it's going to be a real drag. But someone who's always eager to look around what is coming next, and very open to challenging the process as it currently stands. That's number one. Two, a culture within your organization that people don't fear change, and don't fear that tech change in particular is going to eliminate their job. That culture allows them to see that they will be part of the future. And that culture not only is the environment, but you need to demonstrate an upskilling. You can't tell someone who's done a sourcing execution for 3 years, 10 years, 20 years, whatever it might be, that now we're going to get you to do category strategies, or you're now my sustainability person. You can't expect people to just move into these new roles that we need them to support, because we showed all those problems that we're expected to solve for in those very early slides. We have to show people that we're going to help them with that journey and upskill them. And then last but not least, and I know this one's definitely outside of all procurement functions' control, but in an ideal world, you're going to have an IT organization that is partnering with you on this. If you have an IT organization, even if they're running cloud, there's a lot of IT organizations that are still operating very much in an on-prem mindset, where they're rigid and thinking about the tech. They're not thinking about how they support the business in innovation adoption. And so if you don't have that, again, much like I say, find the person in within your procurement function that is interested in looking at what's on a roadmap and thinking about how it solves a problem. Really poke within your IT organization to find that partner. They exist, even if it structurally isn't in place yet. But having an IT group that is going to align with you on your business vision and how tech is going to solve for it is a component that will allow you to adopt innovations at a faster pace. So I'm flashing. But a couple of key points. I won't even cover the slide. Everybody can read a couple of simple points, but just things to think about as you start. I will say that time went really quickly. I hope you can also say the same, or otherwise I bored you to death for 20 minutes and I apologize. But if anybody has any questions, I don't know, Tim, you tell me. Oh, okay.
Time maybe for one quick question.
Yeah, so in terms of the 8 billion of spend, right? So how does Coupa use that in AI? I mean, is it like, because it's every customer's data basically, right? So how does that work?
Yeah, so first and foremost, it is worth calling out that it is every customer's data, all legally sourced and anonymized, and so that is available. It really is community insights. So it's used in multiple different ways. First and foremost, community insights are populated through the system, where you can see what your numbers are and what community standards are. It is used to train the agents, whether it be predictive analytics and predictive. So back to that example on fraudulent buying behavior, here's what we've seen, patterns we've seen in other organizations. So using those patterns, we're going to flag to someone, the human in the loop, you might want to take a look at that particular requisition or that particular invoice, and it may or may not be fraudulent, it may or may not be intentional, but it is using the historical data. And then last but not least, it's using it to train the agents. There's 2 of those agents on that roadmap that were planned for January. Both are coming out in limited release early, one in October. Yes, I have to think of my months now. One in October and one in November. And honestly, and I will say this with full transparency, even the Coupa product team have been excited by, now that they've figured out how to build these agents, how much quicker they're able to train them, because it's building on that data source. That's been very powerful. So, that's an asset that we're really seeing come to life and deliver that value right now.